Hello and welcome to tonight's Doodle. So for those of you who are usually at my Doodle class, a bit of a technical issue means that I don't have any internet this evening, so I'm recording this for you. Those of you who are not normally at my Doodle class, well done. You've stumbled on a nice YouTube video about how to doodling can help improve your art. So I'm going to do a picture tonight. So we're really using Doodle here to enhance illustration or to allow us to create illustration. I've got here a ruler. If you don't particularly like using rulers, my tip is for this one is to just spend some time ruling out a single strip of cardboard, cut it out so you've got like a strip of cardboard, the dimensions that you want, and then use that as a ruler, just drawing the lines in that we're going to draw in. I'll explain it a bit more as we go. But what we're going to do with this one first is to create a pencil grid. And then we're going to use part of that grid to help us construct the illustration, and then we're going to build Doodle into that for the final kind of the final flourish to make it kind of work. So what I want is a series of vertical lines going across here, which will allow me then to choose some of them to help create the shapes that I'm going to create. This is what I'm talking about, why if you've got a piece of paper cut ready to your size, you can just use that to rule down and create your vertical grid. But I want roughly a 2 to 3 centimetre, I think I'll go with 3 centimetre grid of lines. So each one is going to be, well, it's 1.5, because that's my maths for you. I'm looking at the little squares and counting 3 little squares, which is 1.5, isn't it? So I'm going to do 1.5 centimetres grid like this, drawing the lines, measuring the lines out first and drawing them vertically. Again, they do not have to be 100% perfect, and indeed if you wanted to do it freehand and use them to create a slightly wobbly, wacky kind of approach to your drawing, that would work too, but I'm doing a nice sort of straight, even grid like that. The trick is to draw one set of dots down here, another set up here, and then if you've got time, a third set, because if you get one of them wrong or out of alignment, if you do 3, you'll notice that much more easily than if you do 2. So for speed, I may just do 2 rows. And I'm going to join these dots up to make a grid of vertical stripes. If you've got a right angle square, you can do a similar kind of thing and just put that on the edge of the paper and draw your way along. Obviously we're going to erase this grid once we've finished, so that if anyone looks at it, they're going to marvel at how straight our apparently hand-drawn straight lines are. But this is where you can really use a grid like this to help support you getting perspective correct and getting it straight and all that kind of thing. And so I'm a great believer in using any tool you can to get the effect that you want. So if drawing a grid helps, for goodness sake, draw a grid. This is about relaxing and learning to draw in a kind of stealth way, where we're not being hung up on I have to prove myself. It's more important that you get a drawing out at the end of it that you're happy with, and you can focus on the bits you really enjoy doing, which tend to be things like shading and designing pattern and that kind of thing, because they're the fun bits. And anything that will help you get the construction right, do it. And the more you do it, the more you use props and construction lines and tracing to help get your basic drawing together, the more your confidence will grow, and the more you'll find these things easier to achieve and more satisfying to achieve. I'm just going to slightly adjust the light because I think it's slightly whiting out a little bit, but you should get the idea here. We've got vertical lines going across here. Now this is kind of going to be an illustration or a doodle about, I don't know whether these are spell bottles or whether they are perfume bottles. I think that's up to you to decide on the nature of your illustration, and that'll be down to your particular fascination, wants and desires. So I'm going to start by creating a bottle shape. Now as you think, how am I going to create a bottle out of straight lines? Well, when you look at a bottle, it's basically a cylinder with another cylinder on top, which is what we think of as the neck. Cylinders, when you look at them straight on, have straight sides. So this is going to be the straight sides of our bottle. I'm going to start with one just slightly towards the right hand side. Again, you can do any sort of shape once you've got the idea, any shape, any position you like. But I'm thinking of a cluster of bottles which are going to be open, and then they're going to have kind of fumes coming out, which are going to go into doodles and kind of hint at some kind of application going on there. So I'm going to start by just choosing a line here. This is going to be the side of my bottle. I'm drawing in pencil first, and then I'm going to count 3 along and draw a similar line like that. I'm going to do them in pen in a little while just so you can see. I'm just going to start off with one here. Now you can see here that I've deliberately chosen 3 lines across so that I've got this line in the middle here. That's going to be where I can start constructing my neck of my bottle. So straight away I've got a neck here and I've got some sides. So we're then going to put some curves in. If you can keep the curves sort of consistent, that will help. If the worst comes to it, you can just kind of do them, keep them very sort of flat 2D shapes. But what I like to do is a curve on this one here on the bottom first of all. Because this is the bottom of the bottle, it's going to be curving down and therefore towards you. If you find it hard to construct your curve, if you just see this is where you've got the end of your line here, just drop your pencil a little bit lower at the front in that middle line, and then you've kind of got a guide there so that when you draw your curved line round like that, it gives you a curved bottom to your bottle there. As you come up the bottle, when you get to the top here, if what we might call the soldiers, no, we call them the shoulders of your bottle, you want to have the same kind of curve going on, but you want to do it opposite, going the opposite way. So if I'm going to stop my bottle here and here, and then again do a mark, so I'm just coming slightly up like that, that's going to give your line that goes behind. I'm not going all the way through the neck, I'm leaving that as a gap like that, and then I can repeat it on the front to come around. So I'm kind of almost seeing like an elliptical shape kind of going there. That's starting to give me a kind of bottle-y kind of shape. And then up here I'm going to have the neck of the bottle. So again, I'm going to take it just slightly wider. So I'm drawing, first of all, like drawing a rectangle like that, and then I'm going to put my curves in again. So just slightly curve that bottom edge like that, and slightly curve my top edge like that. Now I think this looks a little bit sort of squarey on the shoulders, so I'm going to give it a bit of a curve now. So I'm going to come down here and flick a little curve out and down like that, and then the same thing kind of here. So I've kind of got a diagonal, but I've just softened that diagonal shape there. And this curve is here. It's quite useful to help me construct the bottle, but I can take it all out completely. I'm going to put a label on this bottle. So I'm going to put a band that matches the curve here and maybe down here. And that's going to become my paper label on my bottle. And we're going to be using some effects on this to add some shine and some highlight and make it look like reflective glass. And one last thing with this bottom edge here, in the way that we softened this corner here, I'm going to just slightly soften that edge there so it's not a sharp corner, and I think that just makes it look a little bit more bottle-y. I'm going to draw in the bits that I've drawn there in pen as an outline, and then I'm going to take out the construction line so we start to see this a bit more clearly. As ever, I'm going to do a bit of everything on one thing and then expand it out so that you've hopefully got a good idea where this is going and can finish it off in your own time. So I'm just going to draw, I'm using a 0.3 pen. I'm just going to draw this sort of the neck of the bottle, I suppose, in here. And you can do this any sort of shape you like. You can get quite fancy with it. Just have fun with it. But if we get a basic shape worked out, we're going to do some short fat ones as well, and some roundy looking ones and all that kind of thing if we get time. So just bringing that line down, curling the bottom round, and I'm just going to put in roughly where the label is. Now what can look quite nice to make this look like it's just a random selection of bottles, not too, or instead of like coming right the way round to that edge, stop a little bit before and bring that line down and then curve it around, and then suddenly we've got like a bit of glass showing here, so we're going to be able to add some lights and things, that some effects on that to make it look shiny. So I'm going to just take out my construction lines that I don't want in this section anymore. You can do this at the end, you can do it as you go. Sometimes I find it easier to do it as I go because then I can kind of see where I am, I suppose, and it starts to make a bit more sense of what I'm drawing. Sorry about the wobbly camera at this point. That's just because my eraser is wobbling the table. So I'm just taking that bit of that, and hopefully you can see that's got a more kind of bottle-like shape. Now if I wanted to then do some other ones, I'm going to come back in here when we start to add some detail, and we'll be using these curved shapes again to get the sense of their living liquid in there, but we'll keep going. We can do a couple of outline ones. So I'm imagining a collection on a shelf. I've left up here, by the way, empty for a good reason, because we're going to do like sort of magical spirals and swirls of fragrance or whatever coming out of there, to get that kind of feeling. So here I want to do another one that's sort of sitting behind a bit. So I'm going to have it kind of tucked around behind the one that's already here. We're going to do a different shape. So I'm going to use maybe 4 lines across here, so it's like a wide and fat one, and bring it right down so it's quite a low shape, almost like a kind of square, and then we're going to have one that popping up behind it again. So this one is just coming in, just going to tuck in behind that one there. You can see that kind of nice squarey shape. I'm going to put the stopper slightly off centre because I'm imagining there's a bit of bottle sticking behind that one that you can't see. So there's my sort of neck for that one coming up around there. Then I'm going to make this a rounder looking bottle just by putting a curved edge in there and then reflecting that curve again. So this is looking more like a kind of perfume bottle perhaps. And I would probably just start to see a curve happening on that side there. And we're going to put a nice neck on that. What I can draw is kind of like a lozenge shape, or like a long pulled out shape like that. And that starts to be an interesting neck kind of in my bottle as well. And then if I want to put a label on this one, maybe again a sort of oval label, just to kind of keep that kind of roundy feeling. And often with glass bottles, you'll see a bit of the bottle showing through. So as you come down to the bottom, if you just add a line sort of around there for a glassy kind of thickness, we're going to bring that into the other one as well. So that's kind of like another strange shape. Then let's have another one here. Now you can fit as many bottles as you like in, you know, but I'm going to do another one that's 4 lines across. Depends how you're feeling. Or perhaps a little one as well. Let's do another little one, I think, down here, now that I've distracted myself with that idea. I think down here, do a little one that's just 2 lines. So I'm just going to take 2 lines. I'm drawing in a rectangle first. Like that. And then in the middle of that line there, I'm going to do a rough sort of neck kind of idea there. And a little sort of that little ridge that you get on the top for where a cork comes in. And then I'm going to again put a slope into these shoulders, so it's not completely straight like that, and then a little bit of a slope on the bottom, just like that. So we're getting this, and then we'll do the big one. There's going to be another one here, but I'm actually going to take it slightly over this way so that it's not totally all the way to the edge. So I'm going to choose 1, 2, 3. Let's choose 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's choose 4. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. There we go. And then coming into this, the middle one there, on a curl on each side, or a slope on each side, something like that. And then I would see a bit of the base kind of coming in here, but only a little bit really, because it's going to be behind this oval one at the front. And then I can do a fat neck on this one. So just make a wider shape like that, and then your lozengey bit sort of coming around there. And of course you can make fancier shapes if you want. You can do all sorts, you know, but this is just a very basic to get the basic sense of these bottles kind of all climbing to get clumbing. Is that a word? Clambering. Lined up together on a shelf like that. So yes, I've got my bottles sort of here. So I'm now going to do them in a in pen. So we've got that feeling of the sort of, we're establishing where you want the lines here. So we're just going to draw in the lines that we want, And again, we can then take out the lines we don't want, drawing that sort of curved edge in here, like that. And then we've got the label. Now I did once do an illustration like this, which I unearthed the other day, and which gave me the idea for doing this as a doodle, where I have all these bottles, and one was labelled Spirit of Adventure, another one was labelled, I did a pot of elbow grease and that sort of thing, which was quite fun, because you'd be surprising how many little phrases we have that kind of relate to the idea of sort of medicines and what have you. So you could do something like that. Like I said, you can decide if you're making witches' potions bottles or, you know, elegant kind of perfume bottles. If you wanted to do one with a stopper in, which we can do, we might as well do with this big one here. So I'm just going to draw that ellipse in here. I want to do something like a big cork. Just come slightly up from your lines that you've got there, and then give that a curve over. And straight away that becomes a cork. But because that cork is sitting inside a glass bottle, in this area here, you might just see an indication that the cork is coming down inside that, but it tends to be a little bit distorted. So you can see I've just done a kind of slightly wobbly line like that because the glass tends to distort things that are inside it. And this one here has got a label in as well, but maybe it's sort of, again, turned to one side. You can see a line here that's from this, constructing this perfume bottle. I'm not going to necessarily use all of that, but I can just use that idea to have a label kind of coming in there, like that, or the bottom there. We've got this little sort of like miniature bottle here. If you want to put, we could put a stopper in that one. I think we're going to have this one open. It's going to have sort of like curly stuff coming out of here. So we can have a small label on this one. It's just an echoing shape that comes in and around, following the main shape of the bottle. Like that. So we've got all these sort of bits we can start working on. And again, you want to get some more effects in to kind of get some reflections happening. But I'm going to just take the good old eraser and take out the pencil lines that I don't want. I'm leaving the rest of them in at the moment because you never know, they might be useful. And it's a pain to rub them out and then realise that you could do with them back. Again, sorry about the wobbly camera angle. Right, so now we've got a collection of bottles sitting on a shelf. Now, when we're talking about glass, we want to very much think about the kind of distortions and the kind of shimmering effects that you can get with glass. And it's very useful to be able to leave areas of white to act like highlights and think about where things distort. So if you imagine you've got this bottle here, let's have a look at this one. We're going to put a bit more of that thick glass base in. So we're going to kind of just draw that in. So it's echoing that line there, just following that curve in and then kind of disappearing up into the sides. We're going to think about where the level of the liquid, or whatever liquid this is going to be, is inside it. So we're going to have maybe this sort of area here as to where the liquid has come from. So to get that in, you see this curve that you've got going on here. You want to kind of echo that, but don't go all the way to the edges. Just leave a tiny gap like that. And that is because you've got the thickness of the wall of the glass. So there is actually a kind of thickness here. The liquid is sitting inside that wall. So if you just take it to there, it kind of works a lot better. That means as well, if you actually just think about this edge here as being a bit darker, that's kind of quite a good way of getting a sense of the glass or the bottle coming down sort of here. And then I'm going to draw in where I'm going to leave some highlights. I'm going to do it in pencil. So I'm going to think of this as drawing like shapes that we're going to leave white, and that's going to give us our bright highlights. So on this sort of one here, I'm going to do a kind of elongated bean shape, sort of coming in there. That's going to start being a glass highlight there. And I've got maybe another blob of highlight, almost like I've drawn an exclamation point kind of coming in there. And maybe I'm going to get a wobble of highlight bit of a wibbly wobble, sort of like that going on, something like that. Now to begin with, I would put lots of these in because you can always take some out, but if you don't put them in, it's very hard to make them stand out, even when you have got your, even when you're sort of using your white acrylic pen and that sort of thing. So down here, I'm going to do a kind of wobbly shape that's kind of hinting that there might be something going on behind, like that. And then this one here, where we've got this shape, you have to imagine that this shape is sitting behind here. So down here, you might actually see a little hint of that behind, but it's not going to be an exact shape. It's some sort of weird and wobbly reflection going on there. And then with your line of liquid here, you're going to see the back of that, because it's kind of forming a cylinder inside your bottle. So you actually see that bit of line going through there at the back, and that kind of shows you. I just ink that in, but don't forget there's a highlight here, so when you ink it in, make sure you stop your pen and then pick it up again on the other side, so you've got that sense of distance, because the highlight is on top of the bottle and it's in front of the bottle. So we look at this chap here, this sort of round fat guy. Again, think about where your level of liquid might want to come. So let's maybe say it's somewhere around here. Carry it across, and again, if you're not sure, just mime it across, pen down, draw that little bit round there, and that gives you a sense of where your line is. And then to get the other side, a little hook of a curve, because I'm imagining it to be a kind of flat bottle, and then just get that sort of shape appearing. And then again, it's not quite gone all the way to that side, it's left a little gap like that, so we're getting that sort of shape in there. We've got this bigger bottle sitting behind this one, so yeah, we're going to see a bit of that, maybe something happening here distorted. That's going to be a bit of what that label colour is. Maybe up here you're going to see a bit of reflection off that bottle kind of appearing in here. I think a nice long highlight somewhere around here. So you've got a nice long sausage of highlight sort of down there, because it's a lovely shiny sort of surface, and maybe something kind of wiggling about in there. And usually through that bottom bit, a nice bit of refracted light sort of going on in there. So we're seeing those sort of in here. We're going to do the same kind of thing in this one. I think let's definitely think about highlights. I think if we can get a similar kind of consistency among the highlights, so up here, a big ball of highlight sitting up there, and maybe a little bit of a one just underneath, so got like a fat exclamation point kind of thing. Liquid level, again, start with your front curve, bring it just below that line of the label, and then kick it back round the other side like that. And then I think we can put, we've got a nice highlight here, so let's do something similar on this side, because glass bottles are fantastically reflective, so they've got lots of lovely things going on there. Where you see this one down here, we can put a bit of a base in like that, and then you've got this bottle here, so you'd probably see a bit of reflection in the side of that one that kind of mimics a little bit the shape you've got happening here. It can be a bit distorted, which is great because you don't have to do it particularly accurately, but whatever colour this bottle is here, you're going to see a bit of that reflected and going on in the workings of this one. And of course all the labels we've got on, they're going to be quite opaque, quite matte, so they're not going to be reflective. And this last little one here, let's do a low sort of like level. Well, let's put his base in first. So we've got a bit of base glass sitting around there. His level of liquid, just bring that in somewhere around your label like that, just showing that there. And then again, we're going to have some highlight, that sort of exclamation point on that side, and a long thin highlight on there. And I think we'd see definitely some bubbles of highlight on that edge there. This one's got a cap on. I'm going to put another line in there, so you know, eventually we can do some horizontal to vertical lines in that to make that look a bit more cap-like. So I'm just seeing a little bit of glass thickness in there. So that's given us kind of like an area of where we can add our highlights and things in. And then of course we're going to have our doodle lines are going to be curling up from here into a sort of big flood of roses. Now, one thing I think if we're going to have this one open, we need to think about where is the stopper that we've taken out of here. So we can hint that this is a stopper down below. sitting on the side here. So what I'm going to do is draw in a diagonal line like that. So that gives us the start that's going to be a stopper. Then on that line there, can you see where it's crossing that line there? If you mark top and bottom so it's roughly even, again, use this as a guide to help you, and then draw a curve out, or I don't know what that curve out, curve to the left, curve to the right to get an oval shape. Yeah. Then this line here, an echoing line, so a curve, a straight line, sorry, and a straight line to that bit, and then think of that shape there and see if you can do a similar kind of shape on that there, and that starts to become a stopper. Inside this oval here, where you've got your line going through, draw a small oval, because this is going to be where the kind of dipper is, I suppose. But then you take that into a long soft point like that, and that's going to be some sort of dropper or dipper, or, you know, they have those sort of long wands, don't they? They sort of dip into perfume to make that look, you know, to get it onto your skin. And then of course we can make that look a bit more fancy. We could add a band that could be decorated, you know, like a decorative gold kind of thing. And then if you extend this line up here, we can get a bit more fancy. If you put, I've got just 2 diagonals coming there, and then my curve kind of coming round like that way. So that's kind of giving me a sort of fancy end. And hopefully from that, it's going to imagine it's going to come out of this top there. Now that may seem tricky, but think about just very slowly. Remember, we did a diagonal line here. What I'm going to do now, while I talk you through it again, is to just draw in the ink to show the bits you want to keep, which should make it clearer. So you're going to draw that oval in on that end there, which gives you the oval shape there. Then you've got the side, it's going to come in like that. With this band I've drawn in, you could even put a little bump on top and bottom, and that gives you a kind of decorative feature there. Bring that edge up and round like that, and you've got kind of stoppery shape. Then we're putting our decorative flare on the end, and then the dropper kind of section. And of course the good thing about doing it in pencil first is if you go slightly wobbly, you can tidy it up again when you come to the pen sort of bit of things. Right, so I'm just going to rub that out, and you can see that starts to look like a stopper, and because this one is open, we get the sense that hopefully that this is the one it's come out of. So the next thing I'm going to ink in is make sure the bottom, the glass bottoms are inked in. So this is going to be always the darkest bit of the bottle because it's got the thickest layer of glass. And if you want to practice this sort of, when you've done this one, go and actually look at a bottle with some stuff in it, and you'll kind of see the bits, hopefully, that I'm picking out of that you can see. Just notice I've had that in front of there all the time. Oh no. Okay, getting my cameras modelled up. Well, let's hope that this one, I'm just talking to myself now because sometimes I get like technical issues, so I've got 2 cameras going. Yeah, so I just had to swap into a new camera here because my desktop camera doesn't take, you know, it doesn't do the whole setting in one go. Right, so I've got these drawn here, so I'm just going to draw my liquid levels, just remembering not to draw them in where they cross the light bubble. So a little tiny bit of that line there, and then bring that in there, and then like that. So we see that level in here. Same, we've done that one up here. This one, the same thing here, just that little curve coming round, and bring that line like that. And then down here as well, just that bottom line like that. When I've got on this sort of very dark edge here with this kind of colour, I'm going to draw that in. I think that's going to be quite a spark of light in there. There's usually a bit of a light kind of thing going on in there. I think we're just starting to see. I want to draw this line in here, don't we? So on this top of this here, I'm just drawing it. So I've got edge there like that. And I want to put some vertical lines coming down here just to kind of give this a feel of it being a kind of grippy top that you get. As you come around towards the front of your top, just let your lines spread out a bit so there's a bit more gap between them. And then as you come back round to the right, narrow the gap between each one again, and it just helps to give a feeling of perspective like that. So it just helps give that sort of sense of it moving round. Right, so I'm going to do some of the spirally kind of a doodle that we're going to start coming in here. So I'm imagining this is, you can decide whether it's wonderful fragrance or black magic or good magic or whatever you fancy, whatever the mood takes you. But I'm going to start doing some curls that are going to come up. Now you can got the lines here still, so you can use them to help guide where your spirals come like that. But this is the kind of idea that we're going to have branching kind of spiraling movement coming out of here to obviously mimic the kind of, or indicate that the fragrance or the magic or whatever is coming out from the open bottle. And I think to be a neutral, I'm going to stick to a fragrance idea here. So as my spirals come up, I'm going to start building some floral shapes in. So like here, I can just put a half moon shape into that sort of spiral there, and then just some little petally bumps that, you know, could be petals, could be a start of a kind of very simple flower shape. So we can come up, maybe here we're going to have a few leaf shapes kind of coming in like that. If you wanted to, of course, you could be doing at this point sort of skulls and bats and goodness knows what if you feel in a more scary mood. But I'm just going to keep branching that out, and maybe as I get to these ones, again, put your kind of half moon shape in like that, and petal shapes. I'm sure you've got loads of ideas for the kind of shapes that this can go into, but we want to imagine this kind of blossoming effect. There we go. So that's sort of like flower shapes there, and the curls are kind of going to move backwards and forwards. But having lines here is quite helpful because it helps you kind of, you bring the curl out and you can kind of wrap it round your construction line that, and you've kind of got a way of just taming it a little bit and kind of like getting a sense of where you want it to go. So let's do a little kind of bud shape there. That's just a very simple kind of eye markers each shape, and then do a little line like that, and it starts to look like kind of petals. So maybe as this one kind of comes up around here, that one could have flowered, next one along has flowered a bit more, so we might see that, I believe this word is sepal, and they sort of the little green coverings around your flower, and then we've got some petal shapes coming out of there. So you can see you've got loads of kind of movement, hopefully, and kind of sense of flower, sense of colour. Eventually we can add colour into this and we can kind of get it to grow whichever way we want. I'm not going to do too much more on this because I think you've probably got the general idea, and part of this fun of this is to see where you take it and what your ideas are. So I'm not going to give you the total package. It's an idea sort of starting point, but I am hopefully going to give you a lot of inspiration to kind of work out how to get this to go. It could go across the whole page depending on where the mood takes you, or you can keep it going just to one side like this. So I'm sort of imagining that sort of nice curly energy kind of going up there. So I'm quite liking that one. So I want to also think about some of the highlights here. Now at the moment I've got a choice. I can either leave the highlights as it were in pencil and just work the colour around them, or I can draw them in pen and give them a slightly more graphic kind of cartoon-like quality. I think I'm going to go for the drawing them around just so that they are stronger and bolder, like that sort of thing. I think on the label here I want to draw something on here. I think we could write something on there. I don't know quite what yet. Maybe it will be just like eau de perfume or something like that. but that's the idea that we're going to put that. And I think it'd be quite nice if on the label here you had a flower that resembles the ones that are growing up here. But we can always just start by giving ourselves a border like that. And again, it is an illustration, it is a doodle, so it doesn't have to be geometrically perfect. We're not trying to do a kind of picture in a you know, a how-to manual or something. So it can be a little bit free and a bit more easier. And I think what we could also do is imagine that the perfume is inside this bottle. So maybe it's kind of packed inside as well. So inside here, I'm going to look at the shapes that I've got going on up here, and I'm going to put them into the liquid around here. We're going to colour on top of this in a minute, but I just want to give the hint of all these spirals kind of as if they're inside the bottle as well. And we're only going to see them sort of peeking around the label. And of course, where you hit the highlight, that's going to go on top of them as well, because we're trying to get that sort of sense of things inside. And so the highlight's on top, it's between us and the liquid's inside the bottle, so everything, it goes behind the highlights. But if we just pack these in so as if they're all kind of like squashed up in the bottle, waiting to come out, and they're not going to flower quite yet because they haven't got the they haven't been open to the air, so they're not spreading around. We're also going to colour on top of these, so they're just going to stay almost like inside the bottle. They're going to stay as like line drawings, black and white drawings, because that way you can see the colour of the liquid, and it's all good, and the liquid colour is going to come out in the flowers. So I'm just going to put a few more indications. Again, don't have them going right up to the edge of your bottle, because there is that glass wall that's around them. So it just helps to give that sort of sense of reality, even if it's an unreal kind of illustration drawing like that. And what I'm thinking, it depends how much you want to put into this. You could do the whole thing in colour. That would be great. You could do all of these bottles in dark green and blues, and this one can be the sort of rosy pink, and it's going to stand out against them. Or what I'm going to do, both because time is always a consideration, but also because I think it's going to be quite strong, I'm going to put the most colour into this one, because the sense is that, you know, the perfume is so strong and wonderful that it's sort of, you know, colourful compared to the others. I'm going to keep the other ones here kind of quite simple colour wise, maybe even just keep them in black and white and just use some shading on them. We'll see how we go. It depends, doesn't it, on how we're feeling. So I'm just drawing in these last bits of highlights on here. I mean, reflections in bottles are an old favourite for still life projects because they are so much fun. Well, I want to put some highlights on this stopper as well. So once you've kind of played around with the idea of illustration, it might inspire you to go and look at some stuff in bottles and try drawing them. And it's a project that will take you probably the rest of your life because it's fascinating and they always change. But trying to create the illusion of this reflective surface is a great challenge, and one that's really worth doing. The trick really is to stop trying to see, to understand what's there, and just let your eyes see what's there, because otherwise you get very lost and distracted trying to make sense of it. You have to stop thinking. Generally my guide to most things in life really is don't think too much. So I've got my pink kind of like bottle here. This is going to be my perfume bottle, so I'm going to choose some pinky sort of appropriate kind of colours on it. So I've got some dark pink, I've got some light pink, here we go, yeah, that's dark pink, light pink, and maybe we'll come back with some other colours first. So I've got dark and light pink. Again, if you're not sure where to start with light colours, because you can always make them darker. So I'm going to start with, like I said, just shading in over these internal spirals that I've done. I'm slightly leaving the edge of the bottle at the moment because that's going to actually become a bit darker. But I'm just putting a light wash of kind of pinky pencil over here. It is a simplified version of shadows and shading of reflections. There'll probably be a lot more going on than I've got, but you know, we're going to build into it and add to it and make it more dramatic as we go. But I want to start off by getting a kind of basic level of colour onto it, and just sort of bring that round here. Like that. And then I want to get some deeper colour into the edge here, so I'm going with my darker pencil just into the top of the liquid there, so we get a bit more kind of depth. Like that, coming sort of through there. And then I think I'm going to almost ignore the drawing that I've done and just kind of add some shading lines kind of through it, just to start getting some dark and some depth happening. Where you've got the bottom here, although I haven't drawn it in, you would see a kind of, in the way that you've got the oval at the top here, you would kind of see that in the bottom too, but I'm just going to do that with colour pencil. So just to kind of colour that in, but imagining there's kind of an oval shape going on behind there. So we're starting to see that. This bit of glass in here, I'm probably going to see some of that dark colour refracted and spread through the bottom. And then I'm going to come back with a paler pink here, but a bit more pressure, just so that it's, you find the dark bit, the heavy bit of glass at the bottom of a bottle has a kind of effect, almost like you're looking through I was going to say, not only magnifying glass, it has sort of magnifying quality, so you get like this sort of slightly richer, distorted kind of colour going on there. I'm going to come back into here and work some of the paler pink across the top now, across that dark bit that I put in, I think, but with a bit more pressure, so we're starting to build up some sort of colour, taking it up the edge here. Now you're going to see here there's a label here, isn't there? So there would be a kind of paler bit happening kind of behind that label, so I'm going to slightly darken that bottom section again, still using my dark pink but using it quite lightly. I want to kind of give a hint of there being reflecting that white label through there. I mean, we can play around with reflections and colours and things for a while, but you know, these are the kind of basic ideas that will help get that sort of effect in. So I think that shadow, that's quite nice, and that's quite sort of convincing. I think we might see a kind of a reflection of that label on this side, so maybe just bring my colour a bit darker kind of through there. Now with the top half of the bottle, you're going to see a reflection kind of around the edge, so I'm just darkening some of that edge, maybe leaving a little bit of white at the bottom there, but just bringing some colour up and around that edge, because the glass again tends to sort of magnify the colour into itself. Bring that up into the neck of your bottle, kind of around there. That's it. And then I'm going to get my pale pink again and sort of just go on top of that dark pink and just pull it out a little bit into bottle. This bit here is reflecting that label, so not too much. The bit behind here is kind of not going to see that label, so this bit around here, this is going to come a bit darker. So I'm just get that wobbly line, there's a reflection there in the top there, so I'm going to keep that standing out like that. And then the darker pink, but not putting too much pressure on, keeping it lightish, because that's reflecting sort of an empty space behind it, which is sort of putting more kind of light in it. So hopefully you can see by leaving that corner white there, you can see it's reflecting that label, and it's hopefully creating that illusion. And then up here, probably like a bit of reflection from down below, a bit from around and about, you know, it's sort of just mashing up different pinks really, and making sure that that white highlight is the only bit that's left white, so that we're not getting too confused, but sort of getting that feel of light and reflection, hopefully. Let's bring that a little bit darker, I think, down there. I've got that song V on Rose going through my head now, so hopefully so have you now. Na, 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 na. I'm not going to sing, you're lucky. It's not that kind of YouTube video. Right. So that's sort of like starting to get some reflections and light going there. I'm actually going to grab myself a little bit of, I want to get some orange in there because it has quite a nice sort of glowy effect behind pink. So let's see if I add some orange in as well. Working into the pink that I've got, not everywhere, just blending those sort of colours together. But not on this bit because that bit's where the bottle is, where the label is of the bottle behind. So we're going to see that as being a lot whiter. And maybe a bit of a light kind of coming in there. A little bit of light. So that's sort of, yeah, hopefully we're seeing that as being sort of... Now I want to make sure that this stopper looks like it comes out of this bottle. So we're going to use the same colours on here. And that's going to immediately link one to the other. So I'm using a slightly darker colour at the bottom where it's sitting on the ground, or the tabletop, I suppose, because that gives us that sense of solidity if it's a bit darker towards the bottom. And then we've got the lighter pink to come in over the top like that. And if you bring that lighter colour back over the darker colour, it will start to hopefully blend those sort of two areas in a bit so we don't get too harsh and stripy a colour. Like that. So we're just sort of seeing that hopefully as shadow and shading, keeping those highlights nice and white and bright. Like that. Now this sort of glass stopper here, we're going to see a bit of pink distorted going down it. See where you've got that end bit there. It's just going to give that maybe a little bit of reflected pink like that, but just that a little hint there. This band that goes around here, I think we're going to do that so it looks like it might be gold. To do that, we're going to need maybe a sort of sandy colour. If you've got your gold pens, you can of course whack in some gold pen at this point to make it look nice and reflective. But I think I'm just going to use this sort of slightly sandy brown colour, and then some darker brown down here. Definitely golden brown, of course, because it is supposed to look a bit goldeny. There we go. Right, I'm going to pause momentarily and we'll start again. There we go. It's just my my recording system doesn't like doing the whole thing in one. I will edit it all together so you got the difference, but you know, for to make sure I capture all, it doesn't miss a bit, I have to break it up into sections so we're not too so we don't risk losing anything really, I suppose. And then some of the shadows and shades we've got up here, you've got to kind of keep this is white because it's reflecting the white label, but I don't want it to be too white because it will interfere with the highlights. So I'm just then going to put a little bit of yellowness into that sort of white space there, and then you can use that to maybe get some other highlights and shapes going on. I'll work a bit of yellow into here as well. Just adding another colour, it just makes it look like it's reflecting something else that's going on there, you see. The label here on the front, again, that needs to become darker, a little bit darker, because I don't want it to be too bright. Otherwise it's going to sort of be off-putting compared to the highlights. So I think for that I'm just going to put a very light wash of lilac pencil over the top, just very, very light colouring, just so that it takes it away from being pure white, because obviously when you're drawing like this, the white that you've got is the white of the paper. We can add acrylic, you can use our acrylic paint pens in a bit to add some more delicate highlights, but I think generally if you just try and knock this back a bit by giving it a shade of lilac or pink or pale yellow or something, so it's just not quite pure white, I think that will just help to get that feeling across. That just makes those highlights look brighter in comparison. I mean, it's a very subtle bit of shading, but you do see it. You might get a little sense of shadow maybe just coming through that from this bottle here, maybe just sort of building up an edge of shadow along that middle section in there. Can you see the way I'm doing that, just to give that a little bit? It just looks like it's slightly picking up on that bottle next to it, like that. And of course, because we want to tell the story of this wonderful magical fragrance coming out of this bottle, as we come up here to look at our doodling here, this is where we can add some of the colours that we've been using down here into these flowers, and that creates that visual link between what's happening down here and what's happening out there. And that's all to do with the storytelling, because illustration fundamentally is always about telling a story. And even if the story is just, this perfume smells nice, that's still the story, isn't it? You know, if it was going to be a magic spell and you were going to have, you know, like ghosts and things coming out of the top, or witches' cats or something in kind of floaty form, that's a different story, and you would connect the colours in that kind of way. This is a way that we can kind of connect this idea of the scent and the fragrance that's coming out of this bottle. So I'm just using a very light touch pink at first, just coming up around the edges of these flower shapes, just to subtly bring that colour in. And then on the smaller detail, I'm going to come back with the deeper pink colours to link back down to what's happening down here again. So I'm just using these and the smaller shapes where it's more concentrated. Now you can spend as much time as you want colouring this in. I am being a little bit quick because it's always a bit touch and go as to whether my recording equipment will catch anything, so I'm trying to make sure I do a bit of everything so you've got a sense of where we're going with this. Do spend as much time as you want. Do think about taking this idea and making it your own, because once you've got this nice vertical structure in place, you can see how it's much easier to then go off and build these shapes and have fun with them. And I hope that you will find this is a much more supportive and satisfying way to learn how to draw bottles in perspective, which you didn't think you were going to do tonight, but it shows you the way you can use a grid to support your drawing, and you can get a satisfying image out. It's not about being photorealistic or about, you know, using oil, you know, being a great artist, but it is about supporting you to be happy with the drawing that you do, so that your drawing is something that has interest and is unique to you and allows you to do the things that you love with the colouring and the shading and the toning. But the only way to learn drawing is to do it, and the only way to improve is to do it, and the only way to build your confidence is to do it. So anything that helps you to draw and to build your confidence and to have fun while you're doing it, that's what's going to help you improve your drawing and feel more satisfied with it. And it is a never-ending task. Nobody has ever sat down and gone, right, that's me done, I've done drawing. Well, you know, what shall I do next? Everyone, no matter how accomplished a drafts person they are, whether they're world famous or, you know, have done multiple degrees in whatever, they're always looking to, in their own terms, improve. And every time they do a drawing, they want to do another one that's better, another one they feel more confident with. I'm just using some green here to add some sharp notes to the leaves. So take heart from that, to know that every drawing you do is another step up. And the more you do, the faster you're going to go up those steps towards confidence. And it's not about being good or bad at drawing. It's about feeling satisfied and feeling that other people can respond to what you're trying to say. So we don't try and use terms like good and bad. We talk about confidence, fluency, and satisfaction when we're talking to improve. But hopefully you can see how linking those colours together is really like, you know, a ray of sort of sunshine coming in. You know, I think a lot of people may have had this experience. Some people may have had this experience of when you were a child, getting to look at your mum or your auntie or your big sister or your grandma's dressing table, or her shelf in the bathroom, or the bit where she put her makeup on and kept her you know, and that sort of thing. And as a child, maybe you snuck in there when you really weren't supposed to, and looked, you know, at bottles and smelled things, and, you know, looking, you know, my mum used to let me sit on her dressing table and go through her jewellery box and spread all her bits of jewellery out and sort of, you know, arrange them and that sort of thing. And I think there is that lovely sense in this kind of drawing of like a discovery of seeing this sort of, you know, and this slightly sort of, and being allowed to, the first time you're allowed to put perfume on, if, you know, you've ever had that experience. I think a lot of people have. And I think there's a story around that, isn't there? And you can see how illustration builds stories, because you can start to imagine, you know, this is when the main character in your story discovers a magical perfume that does more than create wonderful scents, but maybe allows things to happen, or it, you know, makes people feel happy. Well, that's what I'm getting off this sort of vibe anyway. And I think that's what is so lovely about these kind of drawings, that you can build on them and you can find them in your own, you can find within them your own tales and stories. So I've just got that in colour. Now I'm pausing because I don't know whether I want to bring colour into these bottles or not, because I quite like that they are black and white, but I think we could still you know, add some tone and shading, even if we stick to quite a limited. I think what we're going to do is I'm going to bring some colour in, but I'm going to do a limited colour palette and quite a deep colour palette. Whoops, sorry. So that I definitely want there to be a definite difference in feel between these bottles, which are becoming more kind of functional looking, and this one, which is all the kind of magical, wonderful, fragrant kind of feel. So I'm just going to use some blue tones on these. It doesn't matter, I think, at this point, if you want to keep them fairly similar in look, because they're kind of, we've got, you know, one sort and then another sort, really. So I'm going to use, I've got some dark green here, I've got some dark blue. And I think with this, because it's they're sort of much more functional, they're going to look a bit more like medicine bottles, we can have a nice sort of contrast. So think about, I'm going to use a green first of all. I'm going to use that green below the liquid line on all these bottles. So I'm going to start off with, it's kind of bluey green, just to sort of fill that in. Now, I'm going to do this as an underlay of colour, and then I'm going to go over the top with blue. So of course, where I've got this green in first, you're going to get a darker colour, which will indicate kind of where the liquid is. So if I just at least get these two on this side done. So it's same with this one here. Think again, even with a dark glass bottle, you're going to have that sense of the liquid doesn't quite come to the outside edge of your line because you've got the thickness of the glass in the way. So I can just sort of start mapping that green in here. I've got this shape of the bottle here. I'm going to leave that for now. And it's going to be a slight reflection, so we're going to come back to that. If you wanted to fill these with different sorts of doodles, you totally could. You could do a different drawing where all the lids are off and the different smells are kind of intertwined with each other and creating a sort of joined up pattern, you know, different colours of pattern coming through. Once you've got this sort of basic idea of how to draw this, you can, your imagination can take it a lot of different ways. With the top of the liquid in here, I'm going to just do a little bit of green in, but I'm going to leave some white paper showing. That's going to eventually be coloured over, so it's going to be a paler version of what's here. But you often get a reflection on top of that puddle of liquid that's kind of in there. You've got to try and imagine the bottle, that the liquid out of the bottle, like a sort of cylinder just sitting there, and it's still reflective in its own kind of right. So I've got those sort of in there. With the cork here, that's going to be like a cork colour. So I'm going to put a little bit of browny tone into that, because you're going to see that through the glass. So whatever colour your glass is on top, that's going to be underneath it, is the cork colour. Like that. So I'm just going to put that little yellow in first, and then using the darker green colour again, going to bring some darkness into that thick bit of the glass at the bottom. That should be thick and heavy kind of in feel, and then we might see some little hints of that green colour kind of coming up around in the sort of lid. Don't forget, where it's coming through here, you're going to see a bit of the cork again, so you're going to have more darkness in the edge of each bottle like that, and then you still maybe would see a hint of that yellow kind of coming through. Once I've got that sort of done, we've got this line here, look, where you've got, because don't forget this bottle's behind this one, so I might just use this. Imagine, can you see where that line comes down there of that edge there? Have that again in here, but give it a slight wobble. So this bit of that bottle is actually going to have some green hint down there as well, because you kind of get that sense then, don't you, of it being transparent. And again, some darks on top of that one there. Right, so then I'm going to take some blue. So I'm imagining that I've got a bluish tint to the glass. So start over the top of my glass here. Again, slightly leaving a little bit of a gap around the edge, because you want that sense of the thickness of the bottle. But I'm going to go right over the top of my green at the same kind of level of pressure, because I want that you're going to see the liquid through the colour of your glass. So I can see a bit of that reflection on the top there. But as I come down, we're seeing that green through the blue. I think I definitely want to make that edge of the bottle behind show up a bit more. That's being seen through that dark green. We're going to put some blue into that little sort of cap around there. This one should probably have had a stopper in it of some sort, but you know, we'll pretend it's got a little cap on it. We can always come back and make that a bit different. And then where we come down here, think about that oval of the base that you would see through again. So draw that in dark like that, so you've got a very strong dark kind of bottom bit there, and then just shade over with your blue to sort of mix those colours together. And again down here you're going to see that shading through there, and hopefully you can see how by keeping this is a really key line here, to keep this edge here and then have that line sort of coming in around there, makes this look really much like you've got those layers and one thing standing in front of another thing like that. And then again on this one, we could do it as dark, or we could just keep it as a clear bottle almost, so we can put a much paler covering on it. I think even if you want to do a clear bottle, I would use a very pale or paler approach with blue. I'm trying to see if I've got a sky blue pencil to hand. So I don't, so I'm going to use this Kingfisher blue one, but lightly, because I still want to get a bit of colour into, if this is a clear glass bottle, I want to see some colour to it. Otherwise it's not going to be, again, you're going to have the problem, it's not going to be enough of a contrast to the highlights. So if I make that quite a light blue, it's still going to give the feeling of there being blue, being glass there, because you need to have a little bit of difference between the glass, the world inside the bottle, and the world outside the bottle, really. And then I think when you come to the edge, you might get a bit of collection, the bit of concentration of the colour. So you can kind of come down that edge and darken it a little bit more. And darken that edge there where it's kind of picking up on. It's sort of colour with glass, it kind of collects colour. So you see kind of towards the edges, you see more colour than you do sort of in the middle expanse. And again, that's, you see, by putting that blue over the top of that cork there, it makes that colour colder looking. But then if you then come, if you switch quickly to cork colours and then use your browns and your yellows on here, probably a little bit of brown lower down, brown lower down, and then it'll be coming with that yellow, because this yellow doesn't have any green over it, it's above water, isn't it? It's in the air, so it's immediately a warmer colour and a brighter colour. It's probably a bit too bright for a cork. I'm going to put some brown over it, but you can see that slight difference in that transition, and that helps get that sense of what's going on in the bottles. And once you kind of start getting a hang of this technique and you can think about how to create reflections, you can do loads of lovely things. A lovely thing to do is try imagining drawing a snow globe with like a Christmas scene inside it. Think about, you know, how the colours would be different from the inside to the outside, all of that sort of thing. Think about where your reflections would come. Some reflections are going to, what I'm doing here, I'm interrupting myself, little flash of pink because look, it's reflecting that bit of bottle there. Here as well, look, we might just see a little hint of pink on top of where you are because look, that's just picking up that swirl there in pink. So I'm just seeing that reflected, and this is how you can do your reflections, because as you start colouring in, think about, well, where is the colour going to be? So on this bit here, it's reflecting this much darker bottle here. So if I can feel confident now if I put some dark green into that space, because I was building up to this and thinking, how am I going to do this? And this is where I've come up with. So I'm going to put some dark green into that outline there, like that, and then I can go over with my blue because it is now like reflecting this bottle and it's a stronger, darker colour. So if we fleck that in, and that starts to look like a lovely rich reflection of that bottle behind, so it's kind of seeing itself in the glass of the one behind, and we're getting that nice sort of, you know, and we might get a slight distortion, maybe another echo of it kind of distorting through on the other side. Down here I think that could be a bit darker, getting that base of that sort of colour sort of showing through. And I think we're starting to see the reflections working quite nicely here. Maybe just bring some swirliness kind of going here. But you can see how that little pink reflection just really helps to, so you can see that where that's reflecting in there. Do you think you might see, we might just see a tiny hint, look, of that bit there kind of up in here, mightn't we? Just sort of somewhere in there maybe as well. I think that little bit from that sort of bottle there. And of course, when we come to this bottle in here, we can put a layer of pink in first. So whatever colour we decide to go over the top with here, it's going to have that pinky hue in the background, and then maybe even a little bit of pink reflection kind of coming up through there. Okay, so I think we are probably getting close to our time. I'm sorry if I'm either going not enough or too much, either way. It's a little bit hard to tell when you don't have a timer set, and I'm doing it in sections, so you know, I'm not quite sure how much it adds up, but I can bring again that highlight. I'm just knocking it back a bit just by putting a light colour over it so it's not too bold, so we're still leaving some room for the light to show, you know, for the absolute white highlights to show. And there we go. Right, my computer decided to go to sleep at this point, so it's put screensaver up. Thank you very much, computer. Let's hope that hasn't interfered with the recording, but I had to pause there to get that to come back so I can see what we're doing. Right, but so hopefully that's got this lovely sense of these, and I would probably do this bottle as well in another combination of pale blue or kind of dark blue, kind of greeniness, so that we've got that nice contrast with this being the pink bottle and these ones being the sort of greenier, softer kind of colours. This colouring probably needs to spend a little bit more time blending in to get a slightly more seamless look. Go back over it. I have rushed it a bit, just trying to get in as much as I can, but work your way back over the top with some paler colours just to sort of start blending that surface in. Like this. I think, oh, I think we probably see a little hint of that blue coming through there as well. Now, I think I'd be lovely to come up with some nice witty name for the label. I have yet to come up with that in my head. I'm just going to add a little bit of shading again to those white labels, again just to take them back a bit so they're not too bright, so we keep the highlights as bright as possible. Maybe I should just put La Vie en Rose on that label at some point, and some nice curly handwriting. Again, if you want to put writing or text onto a label in a drawing like this, I would think about getting your pencil and doing some guidelines first. Also remembering that as a dyslexic, write out what you want, as I am a dyslexic, write out what you want to say first, spell check it, have it right next to where you are, because it's very easy to get that wrong. If you're doing a label in here, if you do yourself some curved guidelines like that, that are matching the shape of the curve you've got on your label, then that allows you to curve your lettering in the same kind of way. And don't forget, if you're going to write a word on this label, for example, it's going to be disappearing on the side, so you're not going to see all of the word. You're going to start maybe 2 letters in. I think you would see a bit of label behind there. Look, if you carry that round like that, just to draw that in quickly, just occurred to me as another little tip. But of course, you might see it with a slight wobble because it's a reflection, but that's going to be lighter because that's label. Just so. When you cut, so I will stop in a minute. If you colour, when you colour this bit in here, make this bit one colour, this bit slightly lighter because it's got white behind it, and then this bit a little bit darker. Anyway, something like that, and then you're going to see that blue coming in like that. So anyway, that was just a quick thing that just occurred to me. I need to put that in. So I think if I was going to put La Vie on Rose, which do my lines here, I think V is V-I-E, and then I think it's E-N and then Rose. If I get this spelling wrong, please forgive me. But the general rule is if you start in the middle of your word rather than an end. So if I want to have I'm just going very good. I don't know very quickly. I'm going to write it in anyway. If it's wrong spelling, I apologise now. So I want to write la. So I'd have an A here and an L, and then a V I E. Sorry if it's spelled wrong. And then I'm going to put an E N because it's on, isn't it, with an accent probably. And then with the word rose or rose, which is for pink. You've got a middle line here, so I'd start with an O here, an S here, and then I can do my big R coming through to my E, something like that. And that's because you start in the middle of your word and work out either way. It's much easier to get it centred and get to fit onto my label, rather than if you start at this end, you tend to find that you either don't come far enough across, and there's a big gap here, or you get too big here and then you have to squash the last bit in. So the general rule, that really helps when you're writing something like that on an illustration or on a label. But there we go. I think I'm going to bring that to a close sort of now, but hopefully that's given you a lot of ideas. I've done quite a sweet, delightful image here. We could of course completely change it up and have, you know, eye of newt, toe of frog going on around here, and then all sorts of like ghosty, squirrely things coming in there if you are of a more kind of dark and gothic bent. But there we go. I hope you've enjoyed my magic bottle doodle.